Why are highly processed foods so addictive, and what does that mean for your health? In other words, why should you care that they're addictive? First of all, let's look at what ultra-processed foods are, and that's things like snacks and chips and sugary drinks and prepackaged desserts. Breakfast cereals is a big one. Frozen meals is another one. So these are the ultra-processed, highly processed foods. And one of the things that happen is that they absorb very quickly into your bloodstream, and they hit your brain with what's called a dopamine hit. And the dopamine part of your neurotransmitter in your brain is the reward center. So it's the things like, that was great, give me more immediately. And so that's where you get an addictive issue. The other thing is that they're very high in sugar, fat, and salt, and that can absolutely lead to cravings and overeating. In fact, this combination of sugar, salt, and fat, and a bunch of chemicals for sure, turns on what's called hedonic hunger. So you've heard of hedonism. So it comes from that word, which basically makes you feel like you want to eat more even though you're not even hungry, or the concept of having a dessert stomach. And I grew up with that. My mom and I are both sugar addicts. Well, I was. I guess you say when you're an addict, you're always an addict. So yes, I still am a sugar addict, but I don't eat sugar. But growing up, my mother used to talk about having a dessert stomach. So that was the concept that you're full, but it really doesn't matter because it's now time for dessert. And you have a separate stomach, of course you do. And so dessert is fine to consume at that point. So I grew up with that. I'm not sure if any of you did, but there you go. Food manufacturers, they work very hard to create this perfect combination of sugar, fat, and salt to make this highly palatable, addictive food. But it's the experience, they call it, is a bliss point. So you've reached your bliss with this food. And certainly, having been someone who loved chocolate and loved ice cream, I get that. You know, like a bliss, I can definitely think of ice cream and go, that was pretty blissful. Historically, not anymore. But they work very hard to create that, so you'll come back for more. There was a very interesting, a 2023 study, this was published in the NIH, but that it said if they found that highly processed foods can meet the criteria to be labeled addictive substances using the standards set for tobacco products. So we know tobacco is addictive. And so I thought that was an interesting correlation. So what happens with your gut? And this is very important to me because I really specialize in hiatal hernia syndrome, and how we get hiatal hernia syndrome is from an imbalanced gut. So anything that affects your gut microbiome, if you're new to that word, that refers to the 40 to 100 trillion organisms making up your colon. And so what highly processed food does is it alters this microbiome, and it tends to feed the bad guys, so you get more proliferation of the bad guys. It starves the good guys, and it also, by doing that, decreases your immune response, so your immune system is not as strong, which of course is always a dangerous thing. And these foods tend to cause increased leaky gut or increased permeability of your gut. And your gut is, I mean, the whole body is a beautiful, magnificent thing. The gut is particularly wonderful in that you have a single layer of cells that is the barrier, should be the barrier between what you're eating and your bloodstream. Now, of course, what you're eating, once it's properly digested, crosses that single layer of cells and now gets into your bloodstream and feeds your cells. So that's how it's designed to work. But what these highly processed foods do is they make the gut too permeable, so allowing chemicals, bad organisms, infectious organisms to too readily pass through that barrier that when it's functioning correctly, will not allow those bad organisms to pass. That's why Mother Nature puts 70% of your immune system in your gut, because there are these, it's like, you know, your small intestine is about 20 feet long and about another 8-ish for your colon. And there's literally guards at the gate across every single cell, to say, oh, it's almost like, let me see your papers. Oh, are you a good guy? Oh, yes. Digested broccoli, you are welcome, come on in, you know, or some weird chemical or a bacteria that's gonna make you sick. It's like, no, you're not welcome. You may not pass, but when you have a permeable gut, you have a leaky gut, then it's a free-for-all, and all these things are passing. Even partially digested food, which is problematic, and which is why people get more and more sensitive to more and more foods as their gut health deteriorates. So here at Root Cause, what we do is we have what's called a root cause protocol. So that's a special diet that's going to look at just kind of cleaning things up, and you do this for 3 weeks. We also look at the health of your microbiome, make sure you don't have any food sensitivities, and this, you know, there's also toxins. So if you have exposure to heavy metals, or you have mold exposure or Lyme exposure, there's a number of things that can sort of challenge your immune system. So we're looking across all of that to get you past not only having an unhealthy gut, but what's beautiful about the human body is as it gets healthier and stronger, it wants the good stuff versus the bad stuff. So we have to make that break between these ultra-processed foods and all their addictive qualities and all the negative impact that they're having on your gut. So that's huge. So there's really no safe place for this. Now, are you addicted or are you not? So think about something that you know you consume that's highly processed, and what is your reaction if I said, okay, no more of that? You know, if you're not addicted, you go, yeah, kind of knew it wasn't good for me anyway, no big deal, I'll find something healthier. That sounds good, right? Or if you go, oh no, you know, and you feel like your best friend is being taken out of your life, then you're addicted. So it doesn't matter. And what I mean by that is that even if you're addicted, it's okay. We can get you past that. We've been doing this for 40 years, but we do have to get past this, because these foods are doing a tremendous amount of damage, and we can't hope to regain our health by having them as an integral part of our diet. Now, some people could go to McDonald's or something. It's the worst thing I could almost think of. But eat some highly processed food, and they do that once a month. And the rest of the time they're eating beautifully. And they can do that. And once a month doesn't turn into twice a month and 3 times a month, and you see the progress. Then okay, yeah, and on a very irregular basis, that's totally fine. But that's not the average person, and you probably know where you fall in that trajectory. So I hope you found this enlightening and helpful. If you did, please subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and also share this with people you know, because you definitely know people who are addicted to these ultra-processed foods. And sometimes it's just that one piece of data, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was setting me up for autoimmune disease because my immune system is weakening. Or, you know, I didn't realize this was going to create dementia later in life because of these bad bacteria in my gut. You know, whatever it is that they need to hear, let them hear it, so that we as a country can start moving forward in the right direction. And if you need our help, of course, we're here for you. We'll talk soon.